How to feel like you have enough. That is what I have named tonight's workshop. And if you hear this statement, right, there's a real emotional connection to that topic of like, especially as creative people, like feeling that we're never gonna have enough of what we need, that there's always something missing, whether it is time, money, security, access, guarantees, right? Know-how, all of that stuff. So when I put this title together, I think this is something that really speaks to the core of some of the struggles that we might be having as creative people. And I wanted to talk about the research around this topic of scarcity. So maybe you have heard this word scarcity before, or scarcity mindset before. And before we dig into this work, I want to kind of start with the definition. So when I say scarcity, what do I mean in the context of what we're talking about? What is scarcity? Scarcity is having less than you feel you need. Having less than you feel you need. So when we talk about scarcity mindset, this is the belief that there will never be enough, that what you want is in limited supply. Okay. So this is kind of the piece of this is like that there's a feeling that it's a well that can never be filled, right? So there, whatever it is that you're seeking, whatever, as hard as you are seeking that thing, like there's never going to be enough to fill that well. You can experience this around a lot of different things. You can experience this around money, right? There's never going to be enough money to make you feel secure. You can experience this around relationships. There's never going to be enough relationships and connection to make you feel loved. You can experience this around time. I'm never going to have enough time to do all the things that I want to do. So the idea is that it's not that there's not enough money or not enough connection or not enough time. It's the mindset that you will never be able to fulfill the needs, that what you want is in limited supply and will continue to be in limited supply. So the idea is that this is a mindset. And when we're in this particular mindset, there's certain things that are happening in our brain that are driving us to perceive things in a certain way and driving us to believe that certain things are available or not available. So I love this. This is like my art joke. And if you've been in a workshop with me, I'm so sorry because you've seen this art joke so many times, but it never gets old to me. And I think this is an example of a scarcity issue, right? So maybe the scarcity issue here is there's not enough talent. There's not enough, confidence. It's a scarcity issue of confidence, or a scarcity issue of, know-how or education, right? And this is how we live all the time, is like this constant kind of disappointment with ourselves as creative people of like not having done it the right way, not having enough of what we perceive we need to do this quote unquote right. And so I want to talk about what's happening when we're operating in this kind of mindset, when we are functioning in scarcity mindset. And there's some great research on this topic by these two authors. This is from a book from 2014 called Scarcity: The New Science of Having Less and How It Defines Our Lives. And this is from a researcher named Sindhil Mullainathan, who is an economist at Harvard University, and Elder Shafir, who's a psychologist at Princeton. And in their research, what they did was they studied people who were experiencing extreme scarcity as it relates to money. So they were looking at incredibly impoverished communities. And they were looking at what happens when they were presented with this problem of paying rent on the first. So presented with this problem of paying rent on the first, they noticed that these people did something called tunneling, which means that they got very, very focused on solving the problem at hand, which in this case was paying rent on the first, right? Tunneling on the area that they were experiencing scarcity, which in this case was around money. And they got very, very laser focused on solving this problem and solving it quickly, that they were able to actually come up with that rent, right? But there were consequences to doing this thing called tunneling, right? Being really laser focused on solving this particular problem. And the consequences there were long-term consequences. So for example, maybe they were able to pay rent because they could take out payday loans, but it made their scarcity issue worse because it put them in greater debt. Or they opened up credit cards and it made their scarcity issue worse because it put them in greater debt. So the idea is that when you are tunneling, you lose sight of long-term consequences because you're very determined to solve something in a short-term way. And this concept is called the focus dividend. So the focus dividend is the idea that when you're in the tunnel, when you're obsessively trying to solve a problem and tunneling on where you experience scarcity, there are some good things that happen and some bad things that happen. The good things that happen is that you experience this increased sense of focus. You're right. You're like, I'm going to solve that problem of paying rent on the first. I'm going to get those Instagram followers. I'm going to build those relationships. I'm going to make that money, right? Whatever it is you're tunneling on, wherever you experience scarcity, you have an increased sense of focus. And in the short term, you might feel an increased sense of effectiveness or efficient, right? You're getting stuff done. You feel like you're unstoppable. We have all had this before. You know, when you're hammering out emails and you're trying to like get stuff done, you feel like you're in the zone and you're doing something really that's called tunneling. Tunneling has long-term consequences. So focus dividend is like, there's some good stuff to the state of mind and there's some bad stuff. Here are the bad stuff. We can't see outside of the tunnel. So whatever you're lasering in on, the problem you're obsessively trying to solve, where you experience scarcity, you can't see outside of that tunnel. So you can't see other possible opportunities. You can't see other collaborators. You can't see the places where you're experiencing abundance because you're so obsessed on solving a particular problem. The other thing that happens is that we lose our bandwidth. So when you're in the tunnel, your bandwidth, which is your ability to create a problem solve and your ability to make non-impulsive decisions, diminishes significantly. And this is not great because we need our bandwidth. We need those creative problem solving skills and that ability to make non-impulsive decisions in order to do our work well, in order to see opportunity, in order to feel like our life is full, in order to not make decisions that could potentially harm us in the long term. And then the last part of this focus dividend is we do trade-off thinking. So I imagine that we have all done this trade-off thinking before, this either or thinking. When you are stuck in your life, when you feel like it has to be this way or it has to be this way, there's nothing in the middle. It's either that window or that door. That is trade-off thinking. And you know that you're stuck when you can only see the black and white of a situation. And so the best way to describe this, which these Malay Nathan and Elder Shafir talk about in their book, is the metaphor of the suitcase. So imagine you're going on a vacation. You're going away for the weekend, and I say you have to pack a suitcase for this weekend. If you are functioning in scarcity mindset, right, you believe that what you want is in limited supply and there will never be enough of that thing, you are functioning with a small suitcase state of mind. That means that when you go away, you pack your suitcase for the weekend, you say, I can either take the umbrella or I can take the bikini. I can either take the towel or my book, right? And you see things in this kind of black and white way. When you're functioning in the big suitcase mindset, this is abundance mindset. This is where we all need to be, especially as creative people. We can allow for many possible solutions. We can say, I want the bikini and the umbrella, and I want that book, and I'm gonna bring a photo album. I mean, because why not, right? There's room for lots of stuff, and it can fit in there. So when you, especially in your creative work, this is where you want to be, because you want slack. You want room for difference. You want room for new ideas, for new potential, and allowing yourself to change. You cannot change and see possibility if this is where we're operating from. So that's how he talks about, they talk about this in this book, trade-off thinking. Okay, so we got the pros of the tunnel, which is like we feel really focused, we feel effective. When we're tunneling on something we feel scarce around. Cons, or we get myopic, so we can't see outside of the tunnel. We have like blinders on to everything else. We lose our energy, and we do either or thinking. All right, does this sound familiar? Yeah. So what if you say to me, well, Christine, I am a creative person and I like the tunnel. I like to be in the zone. I like to feel like I'm grooving, like I'm being effective. Nothing else is, in my way. This is a comfortable state of mind for me. This is how I was trained to work in school. Well, the problem with this, the problem with the tunnel, is that if we spend too much time in the tunnel, we are in crisis mode in every other area of our life. So what happens is we go from tunnel to tunnel to tunnel to tunnel. It's like, I got to do the studio stuff. Well, now I'm spending time with my family. Well, now I got to do that project. Well, now I got to do this other thing, right? It's like you're always feeling like you're juggling and nothing is balanced and there's no slack. That's how you know you're functioning in the tunnel. You're functioning in scarcity mindset. Are you guys with me so far? Yeah? Okay. So let's keep digging into this, and we'll look at some ways to think about this, how this applies to your life as a creative person. So if you're hearing this and you're like, oh, I do experience that feeling of never enoughness, of that obsessing on a particular thing. Why are creative people so susceptible to this state of mind? Why is this a familiar state to us? Why is it easy for us to slip into scarcity mindset? There's a few reasons for this. One is that we feel scarce in many different areas of our lives. So you name it, we got a whole list. Time, never enough money, never enough respect, recognition, never enough Instagram followers, never enough connections, access, pedigree, clients, opportunities, peace of mind. Does anybody have peace of mind? You let me know. You can lead this workshop, enter it into the chat. So or confidence, this list is so different for everybody. So wherever you're at, whatever you're feeling you are lacking around, this is specific to you. So I just want to give permission that your list is going to look different, and that's okay. But as creative people, we experience a lot of this, and it's intense and it can be overwhelming. So that's a big piece of it. And I want to take a poll right now. So to gauge what is front of mind for you when I say what do you feel like you're never going to have enough of in your creative life? And I want you to go to slido.com, and you can enter in scarcity mindset as a hashtag, and do that now. Enter as many things as you like. Whatever comes up, feel free, pop it in, enter it, and then I'm going to make a word cloud. So let's take a minute, because I don't want to show it to you yet, because that's leading. So just if you have trouble, just enter it. Let me know in the chat. So it's slido.com. I'll put it in the chat. And they ask you to enter a hashtag, and it's scarcity mindset. It might be with a capital S and a capital M, and I'll double check to make sure. Oh, it's possible the event is not live. Okay, let me look. All right, when you guys do your reflection, I will come back to this, but what you can do too is let's maybe just do it in the chat. So what is it that you feel like you will never have enough of? Totally, time. Ideas, confidence, money, opportunity, space, freedom to explore ideas, ability to see my talent, creativity, original ideas. Money, yep. Focus, time, energy, skill, confidence, yep. Time, space, and opportunity because of no formal education, yep. Motivation, yeah, time. This is a tough time for motivation. That's a common feeling. Time and money, yep. Keep entering it and I'll keep coming back to it. So it's a good thing to just check in and see where we feel this, what comes up, what's common, and that idea that there will never be enough, and seeing how that drives us. Okay. So maybe on the outside, we're pretending like it's, like this is everything that's happening. We're gripping the boat. Absolutely no problem at all. Everything is totally fine. But really we're in a shitstorm and we're trying to find our way in the shitstorm. So maybe internally, this is where we're at, and particularly in this moment in a pandemic where there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of feeling like a never enoughness. So if you're feeling that way, especially in this moment, we have to be super kind to ourselves in that sense. I love David Shrigley. He is a hoot. This is from Jessica Abel, who has some great work on scarcity mindset. She said, whoever told us we need to live our passions, that we should follow our dreams and have it all? Who said it was possible to fully self-actualize in your life? Basically everybody all the time. When we don't achieve that, we feel like we're failing. We feel scarcity. There's this notion out there that if you follow a path, if you work hard, you should get what you want. Corollarily, if you're not getting what you want, it's because you're not working hard enough. Scarcity ipso facto. So it's just to point out that there's that feeling that it's, right, there's like something missing. If you're not experiencing results, if you're not experiencing, the connection that you want, if you're not experiencing the time or abundance of time that you want, that it's like, it's your fault, right? There's like that never enoughness, and that is really problematic. And it has to do with something that our brains are doing, that we are wired to do. So we have to train our brains to get out of this tunneling habit, because we notice that the tunneling is toxic, right? It's not working for us, it's working against us. And we have to switch gears and change our mindset so that we can start to feel like it's not just a door and a window, right? We're not dealing with this either or sensibility, but we're seeing lots of possibilities, lots of opportunities, lots of ways to connect. Okay, and that's what we think about with abundance mindset. So let's look at let's reflect on this and how it feels in your life, and we'll do that through some questions. So the first one's like, why are creatives so susceptible to this? The first one is that we feel scarcity in a lot of different areas of our life. Whatever came up on your list for you, it's personal to you. The second one is that we like the tunnel. This idea of tunneling is how we were trained in school. The idea of like going to the library and hammering out your hours, right? Getting in the zone. If you went to art school, it's like going in the studio and hammering it out. This is a familiar state to us. This is how we have been trained. And I love this image of this Francis Elise piece, sometimes making something leads to nothing, because it's because the idea that this is how we function most of the time. Whatever we're focused on is like, we can't see anything else. And we're just pushing things forward in a continual way. And as creative people, this feels good to us, and we have to kind of reshape the way that we work. The third reason why creative people are so susceptible to scarcity mindset, to that feeling of never enoughness, is that we are always juggling. So this is an interesting moment, because I think it's a great opportunity to do this work and reflect on these ideas, is because fortunately, some of this juggling has been minimized. And enter into the chat, like right in the chat, if you feel a little bit of a sense of relief that your juggling has been minimized, that some things have been set aside, and there's been a pause for you to reconsider what you want your priorities are and what's kind of motivating you creatively. I think that it can be great. This moment can be great for that. So, but this is a common state for us as creative people, is juggling, right? So we're juggling. Maybe we're juggling our day job and our studio practice. Maybe we're trying to write a grant for something and apply to a job and parent or take care of a loved one. So we're always balancing so much. And like we said, juggling is not great because the idea is you're going from tunnel to tunnel to tunnel to tunnel. You're moving between tasks. So here is a quote from the Scarcity Mindset book from those two authors. Scarcity is compounded by behaviors that magnify it. There are two key features to a scarcity trap. One is being a step behind, and the other is juggling. Juggling is the constant move from one pressing task to the next. That is what I mean if you are juggling, is that everything is pressing. Everything on your to-do list is taking up equal space in your life. And when everything is taking up equal space, you feel overwhelmed. You feel exhausted, right? So we have to create some tools so that not everything is occupying, that to-do list is not like equally weighted for everything that's in our life, right? We have to set some of it aside, but we have to also say, okay, these are my priorities, and these other things, it's okay if they don't happen right away. We have to minimize the juggle. So let's talk about how we get out of this trap. So we talked about, a little bit of what's happening when we're in scarcity mindset. We do this thing called tunneling. There's pros and cons to that. We talked about why creative people are susceptible, because we love the tunnel, because we feel scarcity in a lot of different areas of our lives, and because we're always juggling, and that's exhausting for all of us. So how do we get out of this trap? What can we do to prevent these things and these feelings from happening to us? And we can start feeling possibility and abundance and excitement, not just about our creative work and what we're making, but where it lives in the world and how it engages with people and the work we want to do. The first one is we have to deal with the effing tunnel. Okay? We have to find a way of working that does not cripple us, does not diminish our bandwidth, that does not make us do either or thinking, that does not make us not see long-term possibilities. So here are some ways that you can do that. If you have experienced tunneling, and let me know in the chat too, if I talk about the tunnel and you're like, oh hell yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, right? Let me know, because even when I was putting this presentation together, I was doing the tunnel. Everything else around me kind of fell to the wayside, and I got obsessed with solving a problem. And that way of working can be very toxic. So here's how we need to deal with the tunnel. The first piece of this is we need to set aside intentional time for the task we need to get done. Tunneling happens when we kind of get out of control, when time passes away from us, when we have those blinders on. But if we can set aside intentional time and we say, hey, today I'm going to go in the studio, I'm just going to do 20 minutes, or I'm going to work on my tax return and I'm going to spend an hour doing that, or I'm going to work on that grant, I'm only going to do it for half an hour. And when you have that intentional time, you can check in with yourself at the end of that time and say, okay, am I doing either or thinking? Is my bandwidth reduced? Am I tired? Am I not seeing other possibilities? Okay, I'm in the tunnel and I might have to pause because I'm going to get myself into trouble if I spend too much time in the state. So set aside intentional time for the task you need to get done, whatever it is, and make it set time. Create an alarm. I use this alarm all the time. I use it when I'm in the studio, because tunneling happens when you're making art too, is that you get really determined to get results in what you're making and hammer out a solution and create something that satisfies you. that you hammer in on your work, and it can be, lead you to an unhealthy place. So I use the alarm when I'm making things. I use the alarm when I'm sending emails, when I'm working for the day. It helps you check in and be intentional. When that alarm goes off, get an outside perspective. If you feel like you cannot see different possibilities, if you are spiraling down that never enough tunnel, take a step back, bring in a collaborator and say, hey, can you look at this thing that I'm working on? Can you help bring me back to reality? Can you take me away from Instagram, right? Call in a buddy and have them give you a greater sense of perspective. This is why we have teams too. When you write a grant or you work on something, is that having outside voices, many voices, makes things stronger. You cannot solve it on your own. And so having that perspective when you're getting into the tunnel is huge. Another one is get in your body. So when you are tunneling, when that bandwidth is reduced, when you're obsessed with getting an answer, getting results with what you're working on, you're reducing your creative problem solving skills. And you're spending too much time in your control tower, which is like, we expect ourselves to solve everything up here. And as creative people, we need to solve things in a really like holistic way. We need our whole bodies to be doing this work. So when you get in your body, when you go for a walk, when you go, when you take a shower, when you dance, when you listen to music and, it tickles a different part of your brain, you're getting that bandwidth back and ideas are coming back. Have you ever noticed that when you go to these most unburdened places, you go on a walk, you take a shower, you go like do something that's totally unrelated to what you're doing, that your fresh ideas come back, right? There's an excitement that comes back because your brain is actually restoring itself. So it's something we have to build in to make this sustainable. That's what I want you guys to leave this workshop with, is that we're here to make this work sustainable. And we have to learn new ways to do that. Okay. What is the point of all this? What is the point of this list? Is the idea is that these are techniques to help you step away from what you're doing with a sense of power. When you are, you cannot sever yourself from the task you are doing, whether it's working on a painting or writing an email or getting Instagram followers, whatever. You're experiencing scarcity. You're obsessed with getting results, and you are not gonna produce the best work, right? You're not doing your best thinking. So it's like, if you allow yourself to step away from what you're doing with a sense of power, then you're going to be able to come back to it and see potential. Okay? So that's the idea with the tunnel. So the first part is that we have to look at the tunnel and create that alarm and create intentional relationship to time. So we check in with ourselves. Another way that we have to be conscious about in order to avoid this feeling of scarcity and getting in this scarcity trap, we have to look at systems that we engage with that reinforce scarcity thinking. Okay, there's a lot of stuff that we engage with that reinforces that feeling of never enough. You guys know what I'm gonna say is. Social media is a big one, but the one that comes up right now is the news. The news is an example of a system that is built on scarcity, because the idea is that there will never be enough certainty. There will never be enough control, never enough stability. And so you keep checking the news and checking the news because you're hoping that it will provide you with something. But really, it makes you feel more and more scarce, more scared, more out of control, more unstable. And so this is not to say, I'm not saying, please don't ever look at the news. No, we have to be engaged, but we have to do it in a way that makes us feel informed and empowered in our lives and not kind of crippled and out of control. So just notice that feeling when you go check the news. It's like, is it because you're feeling like you want something? And the idea is it's not providing that, and it's a continually not providing it. And there's something really toxic about that. So it reinforces that feeling of scarcity. Another place that we experience scarcity is in social media, right? You're never gonna have enough exhibitions. You're never going to have enough money, never enough cool vacations. You're never going to have, enough great haircuts or a cute enough dog. It wants you to feel scarce because this is how it makes its money. If you feel like you're never going to have enough college degrees, you go out and you buy a college degree. If you feel like you're never going to have enough cool shoes, you buy cool shoes, right? So these systems want you to continue to engage, and that is why they generate these feelings. They're really smart in how they do that. And so it's just to say that I'm not saying, don't ever use social media, don't ever look at the news. It's just recognizing how they stimulate and reinforce this feeling. And if you want the feeling to change, you have to be thoughtful about how you engage with these tools. So here is an example of social media, right? It's like, this is the reality, is everything looks good, right? But we're all worried all the time. So it's just to say, just keep that in mind in terms of your engagement, especially as a creative person where you're sharing your work and you're expecting to build community in this platform that's always going to be set up to make you feel like you're never enough, okay? My other problem with social media in relationship to this conversation on scarcity and knowing what's important to you is it makes it harder for you to find values-driven examples. What do I mean by that? Okay. If you go on social media, maybe you follow a number of people. You follow your cousin. You follow a friend from school. You follow like some dogs you like, for my Austin people, social media dogs, right? And everybody has competing priorities and competing values, but it's all delivered to you in the same stream of information. So what you want might be clouded by what Cardi B is doing, and what that dog Instagram account is doing, and what that person you went to college with, and your cousin, right? It's like they cloud you from knowing what you want and what your values-driven priorities are. And so we just have to be conscious of that and how that shapes our priorities and what we want to accomplish in our work and in our lives. So keep it in mind that these things reinforce scarcity mindset. So the first way to minimize the feeling of scarcity is that dealing with the tunnel. So being intentional with your time, using that alarm, getting out of that way of working. The second one is looking at where the systems you engage with that reinforce scarcity. I'll tell you another one. Is your job a place that makes you feel scarce? That you're never going to provide enough value, enough of your time, enough of your energy to feel like you are worthy, to feel like you're important. I felt that way at my job, and I have to tell you, it made me leave. Realizing this made me leave, and I am so grateful that I did that, because that is not a sustainable environment to stay in. So just be aware of where you're feeling it and how it affects what you believe is possible for yourself, because that's huge. Okay. Number 3 is we need to minimize the juggle, because remember, when you are juggling, you are going from one pressing task to the next. Everything you're juggling is holding onto equal space in your life, and this is why it's stressful and overwhelming. And when you juggle, you go from tunnel to tunnel to tunnel. So that's why we want to minimize the juggle. In this case, this is a great moment to reflect on this, because some stuff has probably been set aside. So maybe your social calendar has changed. You might have other obligations that have come up, but I think this is a big moment for all of us to really think about what we want our lives to look like, what's important to us, what we want to prioritize in work and in our personal lives and in our community, and how we want to have an impact. So how do we deal with the juggle? This could be its own class. So I'm just going to give you a couple of top level things for you to think about, and then we'll reflect on some stuff together. Ways to think about all the stuff on your to-do list, and if it all needs to be on that to-do list, is the first part that I recommend, which we'll do in a minute, is identify the season that you're in. If you're feeling overwhelmed, that you're never going to have enough time to do those exhibitions and to do that grant and get that new job and be a mentor and all of these things. You cannot do it all at once. And the best way to think about this is think about your life in seasons. And so if you say, in this season, I'm going to focus on these few things. I'm going to serve these people. I'm going to do this work for myself. And all of this other stuff, I'm going to set it aside and it'll come up in another season. And you have to, and allowing yourself to have that. So we're in a season, and we'll reflect on this, that is very particular. And so a lot of stuff has been set aside. And that's a tremendous opportunity for you to give yourself permission to let certain things go and to focus on the stuff that's at hand. So thinking about the season you're in, knowing you cannot do it all at once, what do you want to do in this season in your life? Being clear about what you want. So a lot of the times, especially artists, we are incredibly reactive. So stuff comes to us and we're like, all right, it's like a, a ball of clay. We're like, I can make this work. I'll make this work for what I have. And instead of being proactively seeking the things that we want for our work, for our lives, for our, communities, for our careers. So to avoid the scarcity mindset is like, we want to be prepared ahead of time. We want to create criteria for the things that we want, for our ideal opportunities. What does that look like for an exhibition of your work? What are 4 things that you would love to have? What does it look like for the job that you might be looking for, or for the city that you want to live in with your family? Make it so that you're not reacting to things, you're responding, right? You have the material to make a decision that's informed by your life and your values. If you feel particularly overwhelmed, join a support group or get a coach to keep you focused and accountable. Everything on this list I have done. So I have worked with the coach. I am a coach. I have worked with a group. I lead groups. So all of this stuff is valuable, because sometimes when you're in the tunnel, like we said, you cannot see outside of it, and you need an outside perspective to help you get clear on what's important to you. And then for the nitty gritty, and what I'll do is I'll pass on these slides to Sarah and Grace, and maybe we can facilitate so you guys can get them. Check out a priorities matrix. So that's a way to say, like, this stuff is really important. I got to do it right now. This is not so important. I'm going to set it to the side, or I'll get somebody to help me with it. And that can be really clarifying. The overall takeaway when it comes to the juggle is know what's most important to you and set values-driven priorities. So the values is like what you believe in, what's important, what's like the top, in this season, what are the top 3 things that you want to get done, that's most important to you to get done? Everything else, can you let that be aside? I will tell you, those really empowering. I do this all the time, and it is hugely helpful. Okay, so let's reflect on this. I'm going to give you guys a minute to think about this one. And then you're welcome to share your thoughts on the chat. So the way that I think about the season is, if you could describe the season you're in, what would it be? So for example, some of my students have said, this is a season about nesting. I want to be inside. I want to take care. I want to do crafts with myself. I want to take care of my home and my family and prepare it for the next thing. I have had people say, this season is about preparing to launch. I'm about to look for a new job. So in this season, I'm strengthening, I'm preparing, I'm learning, I'm getting ready. So take a minute and think about what that is for you. Okay? I'm going to mute. Okay, this season I'm exploring. Preparing to take a leap after a break. Great. This season is about learning, experimenting, creating in order to build up my body of work and learn what type of work I want to do. This season's about resetting. That's a lovely word. Resetting my goals, because so far my work is not garnering any interest, right? So reevaluating and making for yourself, right? And like having it be a place to kind of reset. Preparing, however, there are too many factors that I'm having to prepare for, right? So there's that challenge of juggling. So whatever comes up with the season thing, there's no right answer. The idea is that you're saying, like, where am I at right now? What is going to be in service to the things that I have going on? Maybe you do. This is a season that's about family and about health. Maybe it is a season about like letting certain things to the side so you can focus on what's at hand. It's just checking in and recognizing that you cannot do it all at once, and don't beat yourself up about it, right? It's like that's the harm that we do to ourselves if we're like, I have to get it all done, and then you get overwhelmed and exhausted. So focusing on certain things at a time, being honest about where you're at and what you want to give your attention and what you can let set aside, because setting aside things and saying I can't do this right now is so powerful and is so important. So keep thinking about this at home. So let's think about this, right? First, we have to deal with this scarcity mindset trap, which we talked about, those three things. How do we move from feeling scarce, feeling like there's never enough, to starting to feel abundant, moving into an abundant mindset? And so when I say abundance mindset, I mean, right, like it's the big suitcase. So imagine you're saying this belongs and this belongs and this is possible and this is possible and it can all belong here. And knowing that that big suitcase is something that you have to cultivate and practice. And so here are some ways that we can do that. 1, get grateful. Now, I guarantee you have heard this before. If you're on this call, I guarantee you have heard that gratitude is important and we need to do it every day. So I have a very particular perspective on gratitude, which I'm going to share with you. But I do think that this moment is, as things change for us so quickly, you know, and our cities close and people get sick, and that we are constantly being reminded that we have lots to be grateful for, even small things that we were never grateful for before, recognizing that we need to take a moment to do that. But the way that I think about gratitude, oh, and there's Keanu. Slow motion kisses from Keanu. I love him. The way that I think about gratitude, it's the thoughtful practice of recognizing how you are resourced. So when you say, I am grateful for this, what you're doing is you're identifying a resource that you have access to, whether it is a person or a place or an online community like this, or new ideas, or, you know, Photoshop, like whatever it is. It's naming the resource and understanding what you have at your fingertips, which is, I imagine for all of you, there's a long list. So it's a great exercise. And I have done this when I have felt down and felt like I didn't, know what to do in a particular area. I have made this list and it has led to tremendous things, tremendous collaborations, tremendous things in my work, tremendous opportunities. So that goes back to this great quote from Jen Sincero. If you guys like the You Are a Badass book, which is just like I think it's a good book for this moment. It's very light and uplifting, which we need sometimes, is what you focus on, you make more of. So if you are focusing on all the ways that you're failing, all the ways that you are not enough and you're doing it wrong and you don't belong and all of that, know that we all feel that way. That's very common. But if you focus on that, that feeling is going to become easier. There's going to be more of it. It's going to take up more space. But if you focus on the ways that you are resourced, which everybody here on this call is so resourced, I know that, and you focus on that, that grows and you see more of that. And that's an easier thought to have. So we want to cultivate that stuff because that's the stuff that lets us go into the big suitcase. So we're going to do it right now. What are 5 things you are grateful for in this moment when it feels tough and it's scary that there's a lot of things that are troubling to us, but there's lots to be grateful for, right? Take a minute for just for yourself and make some notes just for yourself, and then you're welcome to share in the chat. Take a minute here. What are you grateful for? And I'll explain the resource thing again. So let's just start with the gratitude piece. What are you guys grateful for? Feel free to put it in the chat. Roof over my head, a job, my family, my laundry is clean, amazing, totally. Office space, my coach, computers that work, my family, my friends, classmates, space to create, supportive family. It means the means to work part-time so I can create. Grateful that I can work from home. Oh man, really enjoying my backyard and all the wildlife I get to see every day. Grateful for time to reflect. Grateful for community I love. My cat, my creativity, Dirty Art Center. Okay, awesome. So here's what I mean with the point is lots to be grateful for, right? Focusing on that is huge. Here's what I mean with the resources thing, because that's going to be the next step of this. So let's say you said, I'm really grateful for my partner. The resource is a person I can bounce ideas off of that can help me think about my ideas. This is just one example. I'm really grateful for my studio. The resource is a place I can make things, a place I can host workshops, a place I could collaborate with other people, a place I can get messy and feel free. Let's say you're grateful for your cat. The resource is a couch buddy who makes my home a place I want to be, right? So it's like there's always a resource that's there for you to take advantage of and for you to like feel abundance through that resource. So take your list of 5 things and I want you to turn it into a resource. So for example, I'm grateful for Zoom. It gives me access to a global community. So that's where like the ideas start to pop up. I'm grateful for my family, a place where I can go and I can have somebody make a meal for me and feel taken care of, right? And that makes me feel like, well, you know, whatever it is. So just take a minute and see if you can start translating some of this gratitude into opportunity and resource. Okay. So one example of this, I'll give you one for myself, is, I was doing this exercise when I was feeling down, and I realized that one of my resources was this artist community this collective that I was a part of. And I was like, oh, that's a great resource. I wonder if I could have a workshop through them and I could serve that community, right? So it's like a resource that I had, and how I wanted to be in touch with it, and how it could help me think abundantly about what was possible and what was at my fingertips that I wasn't paying attention to. So when in doubt, try this exercise and see if it leads you to seeing possibility when you're feeling stuck. Okay? So the first one is the get grateful. And the getting grateful every day is a practice, but it's also a practical thing to help you recognize the resource that you could potentially leverage or just appreciate about, things that you have. The second, when we're trying to move into an abundance mindset, is this idea of generosity. So being generous with intention. Now, when I say generous, you can be generous from a place of scarcity. That means that there's never enough. I'll give you everything that I have, my time, my energy, my love, my ideas, but there's like that feeling that never enough, like I will never give you enough for you to be satisfied or for me to be satisfied. So you can give from a place of scarcity. When you're giving from a place of abundance, what you're doing is you're releasing the grip, right? So when we are, afraid that there's not going to be enough opportunity in our life or time or energy or whatever, is like we do this gripping. Do you guys know what I'm talking about when I say the grip? Yeah, okay. It's like if I hold on to everything and I hold on really tight, like maybe I'll be okay and I'll figure it out. And if we're gripping, we cannot experience abundance. We cannot experience flow because we're trying to stay and control that small suitcase. So if you release, if you say, I believe that other opportunities are going to come to me. I believe that my time is valuable and that I can, I'm going to give this thing away. It really is something that will come back to you. I will give you an example in my life. And this goes to the idea of recognizing opportunities as renewable resources, right? Anything when it comes to jobs, when it comes to exhibitions, when it comes to or energy, right? These things are not finite. It's not like only that one person gets that thing. These things are renewable. And it's a great way to think about possibilities, saying, you know what, I didn't win that thing this time. That's okay. It's a renewable thing. It's a renewable resource. And when you put that energy out there, right, it comes back at you. So I'll give you an example. I had this opportunity come to me last year, and it was at a time where I was trying to make a lot of big changes in my life and creative practice. And I said, oh, this is a great opportunity. It's so hard to say no to this money or this thing. But it wasn't in alignment with what I was trying to call in and what I was trying to prioritize. So by releasing the grip, by saying, hey, this isn't great for me right now, but it would be a great job for that person. It'd be a great opportunity for this other friend. You express confidence in yourself and confidence in the universe that other things are going to come your way, right? And it's flow. And in the end, it was a win. It was a win for my friend because she got a great job. And it was a win for me because I got to do more of what I wanted to do. And things have continued to bloom in that sense. So exercising the belief that opportunities are renewable resources is huge. We got to do it because it's real and it'll come back. So I love this piece by Felix Gonzalez Torres from 1991, because the candy is an endless supply. So you take a candy and you eat it, and then it's replaced by the museum, right? And it's like this beautiful like expression of abundance, is like, it's not your candy and then it's gone, right? It's everyone's candy and we're just restoring it. So think about that pile of candy when you're feeling that grip and you need to release with some intention. Number 3 is about luxury. So the first one we said when we're moving into abundance is, what did I say? What was the first one? Gratitude. The second one is to give with intention, right? Release the grip. Opportunities are renewable resources. The third one is about luxury. So when I say luxury and practicing luxury, it could be this. This could be you, right? It's like you so much to do when you get home, but really like all you want to do is be that puppy in the bathtub. So when I say the word luxury, I don't mean go out and buy yourself, you know, designer rings or like a fancy car or whatever. It could be that for you if that's, you know, luxurious. But when I talk about practicing luxury, what I mean is it's about recognizing your values and giving yourself permission to experience abundance for yourself. So when we're cultivating an abundance mindset, it is not something that we can just sit and like close our eyes and, you know, hope that it arrives. We have to practice it. So we practice it through the generosity. We practice it through the gratitude and the expression of resources. We practice it through being abundant with yourself. Because if you are abundant with yourself, you're able to perceive it out in the world. If you say, I am, you know, I'm worth this time, I'm worth this energy, I'm worth taking care of myself, you will believe you are more valuable and more worthy, and you'll be more patient with yourself. And that's huge. It's really like everything, especially right now when I imagine that you guys are all pretty tired. Tired and probably beating yourself up if you're in this class, you know, so you're not alone if you feel that way. So I want us to reflect on this, is that I want us to list 5 things that would feel luxurious to you in this moment. And here's the trick. If you, in your head, if you said, but I can't do that right now, right? But that's not available to me right now. And that's why I feel this, right? And like you go down that kind of scarcity rabbit hole, that's the tricky part, right? So we don't want to do that. So think of like 5 things that you have access to that make you feel luxurious, that make you practice abundance with yourself in your life, whatever it is. Is it a bubble bath? Is it time? Is it a nap? Is it reading a great book? Wherever you express your values, take a minute and think about what would feel awesome to give yourself in this moment. I love this, a fluffy pillow. Napping with my cat, making and eating a peach crispy. That sounds amazing. I'll take one of those. Reading a book, baking bread, doing yoga, coffee in a book, endless supplies, taking my dog for a relaxed walk, wearing a paper face mask. Hell yeah. Cuddling with my dog, organizing some things I've been putting off, right? Ice cream, meditation. I had one student say buying the expensive butter at the grocery store, like the $6 Kerrygold butter. And I was like, that's great. What a great expression of luxury. Long bath, reading, sleeping, doodling for fun, playing with my cat. Amazing. Getting a pedicure, totally. All of this, it's great. And the idea is like, what is at our fingertips? What do you feel when after you do that stuff, right? Where you don't expect yourself to perform, where you don't, you know, you're expressing to yourself your value. How do you feel? What do you see as possible? What's the change after those things? And can you build that in as a practice? We have to do this, even if we weren't in a pandemic. Like I first taught this workshop way before this pandemic, and we need to do these things. We have to do these things more than ever. And if you are somebody that when people tell you that you have to be self-compassionate, and you're the type of person that's like, yeah, I'm really tired of being told I have to be kind to myself, like I have things to do, I don't have time for self-compassion, you're the person that needs it more than anything. Being kind, being luxurious, being patient with yourself does not mean you are a couch potato who's never getting anything done. It means that you know how to cultivate permission in your life. And if you have permission, then you can do whatever you want, right? Like lots of things are possible for you. So it's a really powerful thing to cultivate. And one way we can do it is through luxury and practicing it. That's how we feel more abundant. So look at your list, have it on your wall, do these things regularly. Because by being abundant with yourself, you're able to see abundance out in the world and ask for that abundance in your relationships, in your paycheck, in your collaborations with galleries, whatever it is. It's big. So here are some things that make me feel abundant. I love blowing bubbles with my niece. She's so much bigger than this now. It makes me sad. I love my drawing tools and organizing them. I like a good Aperol spritz. I like hanging in my studio. I like a good salami sandwich, and I like a nice coffee. And these things make me feel fabulous, and I do them regularly. So small things go a long way. Here is your last one on your trail to abundance. And then I will do a summary, and then we'll have about 10 minutes for questions, which will be nice. I'm happy to answer some things that came up. The last one, and this is a big one for everybody on this call, because we have a lot of creative souls on this call. You are all makers, it sounds like, in various forms. And play is the way that we as creative people express abundance in the studio, in the things that we're making. So there she is again. How do I define play? And if you hear play and you're like, oh, I hate that word, it's like, I've heard it so many times before, it sounds so silly, I don't have time for this, I have deadlines, right? That's play is for other people. No, it is for you. And it's important that you're doing it, because it is the thoughtful practice of experimentation. It's about making something without a concern for the end result. So if you want to grow in your creative work, because this is really speaking to the things that you're making, you have to allow for play, because play is what puts you in the big suitcase. It says, these materials belong, these ideas belong, my ideas can shift in this way, I can collaborate with these people, I make music now, and that's cool, right? It's allowing for possibility, because you're not so overly concerned with the end result. When we get overly concerned with the end result and delivering results, we know that we're in the tunnel. So play is about letting yourself work outside of that tunnel, letting yourself say, this belongs and this belongs, and I'm excited, and I don't have to deliver on results. It can be for me and my experimentation. That's play. So we got to do it, and we keep doing it on a regular basis. And this is something that I want you to do this week for my makers. And even if you don't have access to your studio, that's fine. Do it on your kitchen table or do it in front of the TV. Whatever you have access to is great. I want you to build in some time for play this week, where you're not expecting yourself to perform, right? It's just experimenting without a concern for the end result, and see if you can feel that abundance happening in your creative work. Let's reflect on it. Take a minute. How do you like to play in your work? What would feel playful? What would feel just fun and thrilling and not about you having expectations of yourself? Is it sewing? Is it playing, recording into your iPhone? Is it using needle and thread? Take a minute and think, what would feel playful? This is awesome. Getting messy in paint, big canvas that I'm normally scared to waste. Oh, that feeling of waste. I get that too. Going back into the shop after hours and putting materials together that didn't seem to match. Collaging using soft pastels. Yeah, playing every day, making that a habit. Free drawing, letting my hand draw without thinking. Totally, like not like the blind contour where you're not concerned with the end results. So this is just to say, and if something didn't come up for you right away, gel printing, that's totally fine. But just notice where you, if there's that freedom of like, this is what I want to do. I don't know why. I'm gonna allow it to be, and just trust that, because that's the core stuff of like where your creative work might need to go and what might be fruitful for you in this moment. Allow yourself to play just 20 minutes a week and see where it takes you. All right, so I'm going to do a little review and then we'll have some time for your questions. What we covered. So we have these kind of two steps, right? First, we have to look at the scarcity mindset stuff. And then when we deal with those things, then we can kind of start moving into abundance mindset. So when we talk about the scarcity mindset trap, here are some ways that we can get out of it and avoid it, right? First one is we need to recognize and create an intentional relationship to the tunnel. Set that timer, set the intentional amount of time for the work you need to get done. When that timer goes off, get in your body, get an outside perspective, right? Avoid that obsessive thinking, because when it's very hard to sever and pull yourself away from what you're doing, you know that you're in the tunnel and you do the, the myopic thinking and you lose your bandwidth and you do the trade-off thinking. So we want to get away from that. Create intentional relationship to it. Limit your engagement with systems that reinforce scarcity. So recognize that social media might make you feel like shit. Recognize that the news might make you feel like there's never going to be enough security and safety and control. Recognize how your employer might make you feel, or friends, or wherever. Where are you engaging that feeling of never enoughness is being reinforced? Take a minute, pause on that, maybe reevaluate. Limit your juggling. This is a great moment to think about the season you're in. What are like maybe the 3 or 4 things that you want to focus on? What else do you want to set aside? Setting things aside is valuable, and it's the only way that we can really move forward and change our habits and feel like we're in control of our lives and we're not always failing in some department or another. We have to set things aside. Prioritize with your values in mind. How to be abundant. So these are the habits we're putting in place, right? Good habits. And then how do we start practicing this abundant? We cannot just sit and wait for a tribe. We have to practice it. Get grateful. What you're grateful for is a resource that you can leverage in your life. Call it out. Name what it is. Express gratitude. Give something away. So can you practice this intentional generosity? How do you release the grip and say, there is enough? More will come. I believe that there's stuff coming to me, and I'm going to release the grip and give with intention, because it's a win for me and it's a win for people in my community. Practice abundance through small luxuries. Take that bath. Eat that peach cobbler. I love it, right? Whatever else is on that list of things that make you feel good, buy that expensive butter. It's important. This is so huge, because when you practice it with yourself, you believe it and you see it out in the world. And then lastly, for my creative, every maker in this room, because you guys are all creative souls, play. Play is non-output driven time. It's experimentation time. It's way that you can say to your artist self, this too, I'm trying this too, and yes to this idea. Make room for non-productive, expressive time. That's where growth happens, is in the play, the movement into the big suitcase. Okay? So that's it on those ideas. Thank you guys. Like I said, I'll pop out and we'll answer some questions. This is where you can find me. If you like this stuff, you value these ideas, you want to dig deeper, get some support, sign up for my newsletter. I send out all sorts of things on these topics and links, and then I talk about other workshops. And then if you want kind of like some revisitations of these ideas, I talk about these concepts in my podcast, A Mighty Practice. So you can find out more about that there. Okay. Thank you guys. And yeah, I'm happy to chat for a bit. I don't know if Grace, so if you guys have questions, yeah, you just put it in the chat and Grace will, yeah.
Yeah, and I just also put a link to a survey that we have, just if you have any feedback on this workshop and if you have any topics that you want us to cover in the next coming workshops. Christine, one question I did see from earlier is someone was a bit confused about the relationship between tunneling and juggling, and is tunneling the opposite of juggling, and how those terms relate to each other.
Okay, cool. So tunneling is when you focus obsessively on the thing that you're experiencing scarcity around. So you can tunnel on that feeling like I'm never going to have enough Instagram followers, and then you go on Instagram and you're like obsessed with getting followers, right? So that's just an example. Or if you are in the studio and you're working on a painting and you're really like tunneling because you're like obsessed with finishing the painting and getting results, and you're feeling like there's never going to be enough of what you want out of that painting. So that's the tunnel. When you are juggling, which means that everything is really pressing and demands your attention, so you say like my art practice and my grant writing practice and my job and my dog and my mom, it's like you're moving from one tunnel to the next. So the tunnel is on like my family time, and now the tunnel is on my creative practice, and the tunnel is on this thing, right? So that's the relationship between the juggle and the tunnel. The tunnel is the way that you are giving yourself to something and obsessing about something. And when you are juggling a lot of different things, it's like you're tunneling on different things at different times. Is that a little more clear? Maybe.
It made sense to me.
Yeah. What else?
Someone asked, can a season last too long? Trying to regain my artistic voice, but I seem to play a lot. So I guess how to know how long a season lasts and when it's time to go to a new season.
Yeah. And so I guess in that sense, the question relates to like the season in your creative work too, which, it's everyone is really different on that. I don't, there's no such thing as it lasting too long. I think if when you're at the end of your body of work that you're starting to feel like you're repeating yourself and you're starting to feel stuck and you're starting to do the either or thinking and you're starting to lose your bandwidth, right? All of that, you might be at the end of that body of work and something has to shift. And you might have to like do some playing and say, okay, this body of work, something needs to change. I'm feeling a little stuck. I need to go over here and I need to play and I need to follow my thrill and I need to not be focused on the outcomes, because if you focus so intently on the outcomes, on delivering results, that's where you get stuck, right? And you can't see potential and new opportunities. And that happens in our creative work too. So playing is the expression of abundance in the studio, trying new things, not being concerned with the outcome right away, and trusting that and seeing where that leads. So just if you're playing, that's great, and just keep doing it and see where it takes you.
It looks like we have another question about besides setting a timer and other suggestions you gave, what are some other ways to focus but not tunnel?
Okay, yeah. So there's two things there's flow and there's the tunnel, right? So what you think of probably as flow is really the tunnel. These are easily confused states. So the tunnel is when you cannot sever your connection to what you are producing, right? You cannot pull away from your email. You cannot pull away from that thing, right? Like you're so determined to get an answer and results that you can't stop yourself. That's when you know you're in the tunnel. Flow is when you can step away from what you're doing with a sense of power and possibility. So you can step away from that painting and say, I feel good. You know what? I'm okay with this painting right now. I'll come back to it. Or a grant that you're writing and say, I'm going to take a pause and I'll go back to this. Or an application process and say, I've done enough today. I'm going to leave. That's when you're in flow. So it's just to say that if you experience that condition where you cannot separate and your worth is connected to the results that you expect to deliver, then you know you're in a state where you got to set the timer and you got to, you have to like go for a walk, get an outside perspective, step away from what you're doing. Yeah. They're easily confused states, and they happen all the time. I mean, I was in the studio the other day and I was like, I'm in the tunnel. I got to like go on a walk.
Yeah. Another question, does minimalism help with juggling?
Minimalism in the sense of not like focusing on a couple things at a time? Mary, do you mean minimalism in the environment? I'm not sure I understand that question. Does minimalism help with juggling? I don't know if you can elaborate. I don't know. I guess in the sense that if you're focusing on fewer things, it can be, right? Maybe, reducing your distractions. It depends on how you are. It's more to say that everything that you're putting in your season of what you're focusing on is intentional. So it's stuff that you want to be giving your energy, that you have decided that it's there. It's not there because you're reacting to it or because you think it should be there or you feel guilted for it to be there. It's stuff that you're saying, I'm focusing on these things. I'm excited about them. They have intention in my life, and that's what works for me. So everyone is different. You could be the type of person where you can only do 2 things at a time. Other people can maybe do 6 or 7 things on a time. It really depends on you, but just knowing that you're doing it because you want to and because it's being driven by your intentions and your values. Yeah.
There was another question a little bit back that I can certainly relate to. So I wanted to make sure it got addressed. Somebody says, I'm fortunate enough to have a job that allows me to have a lot of creative freedom, but I struggle with letting work from this job occupy my creative brain and time when I'm not at work. So it's hard to prioritize and keep my personal art projects progressing. Do you have any tips on how to create happy habits around this?
Yeah. So it's like so it sounds like the job is taking up a lot of the creative energy. And then when you go to do your creative work, maybe there isn't the same level of energy. Is that how you interpret that, Sarah?
Yeah, that's how I read it.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's for me, when it comes to the creative work, everyone is different. I am somebody who I am very stimulated by having a lot of different types of projects at once. So I have, a coaching practice, I have a newsletter, I have a podcast, I have a painting practice, I have an installation practice. These things all scratch different itches for me, and they're really satisfying for me to be solving different problems and moving between those things. When I work in my painting, I only spend maybe like 2 or 3 hours a week, and that's it. But the idea is that the time is protected. So whatever habit you're trying to cultivate, you are creating protected time, and you're making it small. So maybe it starts at like 20 minutes a week, and in that time, you're like, I'm not going to focus on work. I'm going to do this, in the morning when I have energy, and I'm going to give to my artist self, and I'm going to do it in that time. And you're making it protected, so it's not interrupted by other things. It's not interrupted by things that drain you, like Instagram. It's not interrupted by answering your emails. And that's a really hard thing to cultivate, because when we are trying to make time for our creative lives as artists, it's time that is often abstract, which means that you are not delivering results right away. And it's hard for us to convince ourselves that this time is valuable, because we're so used to saying, answering that email is valuable, responding to that friend is valuable, doing that other thing, for somebody else makes me feel valuable. This work doesn't make me feel valuable and important. So when you're feeling that way, it's just to say, start small. be consistent, make it protected, and let it be something that you grow, and you don't have expectations of yourself right away. And that's how it's gonna start to be something in your life that takes you somewhere, and the work will develop as a result of that. Yeah, taking the pressure off.
Maybe one last quick question was, I think it's asking kind of like, what are your thoughts on creating schedules, and how important is that part of having that be part of the practice?
Yeah, I'm a totally a creature of routine. So I have stuff that I do every day for my creative life. I do like morning pages every day. I do, you know, it's not a lot. It's 10 minutes. It's something that I can manage, and that's it. And I have a commitment that I make to my studio, and that is every Friday is like my studio day. So I am not in my studio every day, all day, because I have all these other commitments, and I have a job, and I have other things that I have to do. But the idea is that keeping the bar really low, like your expectations are low, the time commitment has to start low, and letting it grow from there, and letting it, be focused more on the frequency with which you're doing this and the regularity, even if it's once a week, than the amount of time. Oftentimes as creative people, we think we're not doing something valuable, or the practice isn't real unless it's like 30 hours a week. And it doesn't have to be that way. It can be 10 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, but focusing more on the continuity, and you doing it again and again, versus the quantity and how much time you're putting in, because the time will eventually come. It's the frequency that makes the difference. So yes, routine and habits are huge, for sure.
Great, thank you. I think that's all the questions we have time for right now. I have been recording this, so we'll definitely be able to share it with everyone. And Christine, I'll ask for your slides, and then we can share those too. And Sarah posted the link to our website, and I shared the link to the survey. So yeah, if you have any ideas about topics you want us to cover next time, let us know. Christine, thank you so much. I have a lot to think about now too.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your questions and for being here. Yeah. Bye. It was good to see you. Yep. And
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and end the meeting.